Hi everyone, welcome to WW Designs. My name is Nikki and I have been playing with food colouring. The other day I was going through a collection of papers that I had and I found some pages that I had dyed with food colouring a very long time ago. And I didn't think much about them. I grabbed some out. I did some stamping to make some ephemera. And I then had this thought. I don't remember exactly how I did it or concentrations. And I wanted some pink pages for another project down the track. So I thought I would do some experimenting. So I thought I would take you along on this little journey. This is a really fun and cheap way to make unique ephemera. But of course, at the same time, you can play with food colouring and make a selection of colours or all one colour. It's a really good way of creating a cohesive look in a journal. For example, if you're doing a nature journal, you know, we all use tea and coffee stain paper. That's very common when creating journal pages. But let's say you were doing a nature journal and you included some green papers and some green ephemera, or you're doing an ocean themed one, include some blue ones. You can dot them through a journal. You can make ephemera to dot through a journal. You can make bases for tags and journal cards, which of course you then decorate, and you add these little bits as you're making your journal for a very cohesive look. Now, the reason why I started doing these, if you have a look at this journal card I did, this plain colour with the black background can look really effective on top of a very busy or colourful base. So I thought I can easily put these to use. And then pieces like this, for example, you're making, you're decorating a pocket or an envelope or something like that. These sort of things can make really good layering pieces. Or if you're making clusters, little stamps like this can be layered up. It helps break up a lot of pattern and just calms things a little bit. So it's fun, it's easy, it's very cheap to do. So let's have a look at what I did with my little experiment. Have a look at this here. Now, I appreciate it may not be as clear as it is with what I can see in natural daylight, but you can definitely see the difference in colours. This is a fresh white piece of very basic standard coffee paper, and then as I went through the process, they got a little bit darker and darker. Now, at the same time, while I was doing this, I also did some doilies. And as you can see, colours got darker and darker, and I'll get to how I got to this one a little bit later. And at the very last minute, I wish I'd thought about it earlier, I threw a piece of book page in. Perfect. Okay, so how did I do all this? I will show you. It's a very simple process. Now, I'm not actually going to deal with water and food colouring on my desk. There's too many electrical appliances and things around, but I will show you how it's done. You just got to pretend there's some water in there. So what do we need? We need a tray. I like using this tray because my A4 sheet of paper fits in perfectly. You will need water. So what I did for my experiment, I started off with 1 cup. So that's 250 ml of water. Of course, you need food colouring. These are very, very cheap to purchase. We buy these in our local supermarket. And what I love about them is they're concentrated, they're tiny, and they drop, each drop very exactly. They don't spurt out and you end up with some horrid colour. So I, of course, decided I wanted some pink ones. So all I did was use the colour red to end up with all these shades. Of course, you can mix like blue and green if you want to create aqua. If you want orange, play with red and yellow. It's no different to any form of colour mixing. It doesn't have to be one colour. You can mix them together if you want. I always wear a pair of gloves because you don't want food dye all over your hands. That could take a while to wash off. So my recipe for my 250 ml of water and my food colour, I started off with only putting in 3 drops. So then all I do is I just swoosh the tray around like this until my colour was evenly dispersed. Then I grabbed my first piece of paper. When I do this, I know some people when they're coffee dyeing and things like that, put multiple pages in. I just like to do one at a time. So all I do is I tap it down, okay? So because the paper tends to float on top of the water, so I just give it a tap around, and then I'll just... One thing you have to be careful of, obviously, thin copy paper does become quite fragile. But I found the easiest way to get the paper out without it tearing is use your thumbs to gently push it up, and then you can grab your piece of paper easily. You flip it over. You tap around a little bit more. You do exactly the same thing. Can you see how easy that is? And it saves trying to dig your fingers in underneath. And I only had 1 page break on me with all that I did. And that was not because it tore doing this part. I had them all drying out in the garage, and I opened the garage door and a gust of wind pushed my garbage bags and I had 1 page break. So this is a pretty foolproof way of getting your paper out and keeping it whole. So what I did was about 3 pages or so, plus my first doily, and that was round 1. Now, keeping in mind, each time you do a page, the amount of water in here is decreasing. So the next thing I did, we started off with 3 drops. Then I added another 2 because I'm trying to get it a bit darker. And that's exactly what happened then in step 2. As you can see, it's not a huge difference, but there's definitely a difference. I did about another 3, maybe 4 pages. Then I added another 2 drops. So again, my water level's reducing. I'm adding more colour, so we're getting brighter and brighter. So that is how simple it is. Now, for my 250 millimeters of water, I ended up with 16 pages, 4 doilies, and 1 book page. And then I basically had virtually nothing left. So if you didn't want quite as many of a particular colour, just start off with less water. You may not need 16 pages, but just... this gives you a guide so you have some idea of how, if you have a target of how many pages you want, keeping in mind you can use these pages obviously for bases, for journaling cards. You can make pockets with these and then decorate them. So just decide how many you think you want. And if you don't want as many, just reduce the amount of water you start with. Or if you've made enough, just throw it out, okay? Pop it down the sink, give it all a good wash, and you're good to go. Now, of course, keeping in mind when doing this, you will end up with pages that are what I would call quite bright and colourful. 3 things, you could pre-coffee dye paper and then try and add the food colouring. But that is one thing I haven't tried. I thought about that once I'd finished and I went, look, I can't be bothered starting again. But there is 2 ways. If you prefer a more vintage look and you want sort of to tone down the colour, add some, coffee colour or tea, there's 2 ways. Now, I don't know, is it... Oh no, the camera's picking that up quite well. With this particular one, this was one that I had in my stash that I had done a while ago. And all I did was coffee sprayed them, okay? Very simple. And then you get some brown, okay? And it makes it look a little bit more vintage and not as bright. The other thing you can do, and I love how this turned out. So when I do coffee dyeing and stuff like that, out on my garage floor, I lay down large garbage bags cut open. So you know those big rubbish bags you put rubbish in? Yep. I cut them open, lay them flat. Not always perfectly flat, and that's how some of these effects come in. So let's say, for example, I have a magazine page and I want to quickly coffee dye it. I put it out in the garage on my garbage bag. I spray it with coffee and I leave it to dry. What happens is you end up with buildup of coffee spray from, you know, where it's gone over the edge when you're spraying with coffee. So what I did, I grabbed a sheet that I had put into my pink dye, and then I lay this down on the same side that already had some coffee from previous experiments, and have a look at the sort of thing I ended up with. I love these sort of marks. They give it a definite more of a vintage look, but my absolute favourite is this doily. This was done the same way. Have a look how I've got all this beautiful colour around the edge and little marks in here. So if you don't want marks, you'd have to make sure you used a clean garbage bag, or the other thing I have used in the past, but I don't have them anymore, but you know those plastic tablecloths you used to be able to buy for parties? I don't even know if you can buy them anymore, but they're fabulous because you can lay lots of sheets of paper down on that. But have a look. I just adore this. That looks so vintagey, and all I did was let these dry. And because they're wet, because these are wet, they reactivate the coffee spray that's on them. And I think that effect is absolutely stunning. So there you go. That is how we create very easily custom-made paper that you can use in your journals, you can use to make ephemera, and they just make great bases. You can decorate to your heart's content then. You know, even on these pages, do a little stenciling, do a little stamping, whatever you feel like doing. But it can create a really great look into your journal. And I will be putting some of these to use in a video in the future because I made all these pink pages for a reason. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, in case I've skipped anything you don't quite understand, please leave it down in the comments box below. I'm happy to help out, because sometimes you're doing videos and you think, oh, wish I'd told them that. But I think I've covered it all quite nicely. And please give this a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. It just helps people see my videos, and I would really appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, please hit that button. Come along and play for all sorts of paper crafting videos. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye for now.